a couple of things with regards to our discussion. We have covered this particular unit in comprehensive detail, but what I would want to do is give you a bit of a steer in terms of how you would look at going about doing the assignment. When you look at this particular unit. So what I will do is I'm going to press record, and then what I will do is also share my screen. And this screen, when I share, essentially should allow you to see a couple of documents, because what I want to do is show you how an assignment would be done and how you would go about submitting the assignment. So let me just share my full screen. I think hopefully this session is going to be useful for some of you who are looking at, maybe doing this assignment for the first time, or if this is the first assignment that you're looking at doing. So I'm going to try and exactly show you how you should go about, actually doing the assignment. So let me press record. I'm going to stop the video so that the video that you get later for the session, has a file which is manageable in terms of recording. But yeah, you can ask me questions through the chat room, and obviously also raise your hand and interject with me or discuss with me while I'm talking. Now, what I would want to do essentially is show you the full screen. For those of you who have joined us on the tablet or the phone, the idea would be that you move your phone or your tablet into a landscape mode, and that should allow you to see the full contents of the screen. Now, basically, there are three things that I've opened up. One is called the unit specification, which is what we call US. And this is what I've been using to teach you and take you through some of the indicative content and the key bits on the unit. So this typically has, things like the indicative content that we've covered in terms of studying the unit, and the sessions that we've done so far, the 6 sessions, basically have all this material being covered through a PowerPoint presentation, our discussions, maybe a video that I've shown, and this allows you to comprehensively cover the unit in terms of studying. Now, the second bit that we look at is what is called the assignment brief. Now, this is called AB. Now, this assignment brief is the brief which everybody needs to attempt to be able to pass this unit. This assignment or this particular unit is graded. So you have grades like pass, merit, and you have grades like distinction. That means if you are looking at attempting all the past tasks which are given here and given here in the assignment brief, it's the same bit. You will be looking at achieving a pass. But if you're looking at doing pass and merit tasks, which are basically termed as extension activities in the assignment brief, then you're looking at merit. But if you do everything in terms of all the tasks, then you're looking at achieving distinction. So just to show this to you briefly in terms of how it looks like when we do these tasks. So there is no change in terms of what is given here and is given here, but what the awarding body does is creates a bit of a background or gives you a scenario to say that this is what you need to assume or understand, and then go about doing some of the activities which are designed in the form of tasks. Now, because there are 6 learning outcomes in this particular unit, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are going to be 6 tasks in the assignment, and they will all conform to each of the learning outcomes and the criteria which are given. So if you see 6.1 here, it talks about describe common types of medication. It basically lists it here like that, but they've given you a bit of a background to say why you need to look at doing this task and how you would go about doing this task. The background which is given is primarily going to explain what kind of an evidence you need to create to do these tasks, because the awarding body expects that you at some stage have gone through reading this unit. So what they would want to do is ask you to produce different types of evidences in a Word document, in a PowerPoint presentation, maybe as a flow chart, as a sheet, or as a table, and that would test your knowledge in terms of what you've studied in the unit. So for task 1, as you can see, it says prepare a training resource for the interview, which is going to be a Word document. Then we look at second one, it says assess the methods of communication used by people. So here, in this case, you could either do a PowerPoint presentation or you could essentially just, create a Word document. In the third one, it is asking you to prepare a training guide for the staff who are new to health and social care sector. So again, it is going to be like in the form of a Word document wherein you are going to do these tasks, and it'll be designed or done as a training guide. Now, in the fourth task, it says carry out analysis of an organization of your choice. So here you need to take a care home or one of the organizations in health and social care setting. And again, this assignment or this particular evidence is going to be a Word document unless it is specified very clearly. Like here, prepare a short leaflet for the information. So here you'd be looking at designing a leaflet, and I'll show you how a leaflet is designed in Microsoft Word. And then that leaflet will have the tasks or questions that you are going to answer, and they are going to be presented in that. And the last task says you have to do a reflection on what you're carrying out in terms of giving prescribed medication. And here, in your case, you're also looking at producing a complete account. That means, again, a Word document has to be, produced in order for you to achieve the pass criteria. Now, all the merit and the distinction criteria are typically labeled separately as extension activities, because again, grading is something which is optional. You might decide not to study for the higher grade or get a higher grade, but it is optional. So in those cases, you will still need to meet the past tasks. So if you see, there are 4 bullet points here, and it conforms to 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. And if I go into learning outcome 6 here, as you can see, there is only one distinction activity. There is no merit. So in the extension, the distinction task is mentioned separately as 61. So you are able to see that whether you use this particular unit specification to do your assignment or the Word document, which is provided as an assignment brief, are pretty much the same. The only difference is that before you start doing the task, if I ask you to say, and if I ask you to do a particular task, and I would say, can you take out your pads and can you write down 100 words on, the essay, for example, or 100 words about yourself. Now, you might say, why is he asking me to write 100 words? So you would maybe raise a question and say, why do you want me to write 100 words about myself? You might ask me questions. And in order to do away with these questions and give you a bit of a background, I might explain to you that we are looking at doing one of the activities of the assignment, and that requires you to talk about yourself and you're working within the health and social care sector. And this is where I'm asking you to write 100 words, which would be useful to describe, your area of work at your workplace. And if I give you this context, or if I say, can you choose an organization and tell me why you've chosen this organization for the purposes of doing the assignment, then I'm giving you a pretext to, and also a background to say why this is required to be done. And with that understanding in mind, it allows you to then structure your work. Similarly, if you pick up the unit specification and do this, there is no background given when you start doing the tasks. So the difference between an assignment brief by the awarding body and the unit specification is that in the unit specification, there is no background or scenario given, but in the assignment brief, before you attempt any task, it will give you a bit of a background or scenario or a pretext to assume that with this in mind, or with this in taking into account, or with this in taking into view, you are required to do these tasks. So it gives you a bit of a, let's say, an introduction to say, this is how and why you're looking at doing these tasks. Now, if I'm in your place and if I need to do this assignment, what I would do is open a new Word document. Now, for the purposes of our discussion, what I've done is I have used both these documents, and I've converted this into a presentation, which is called the assignment discussion session. Now, all the bits that are given in the assignment brief have been taken here. And what it allows me to do is basically use this as a presentation or as a document to discuss what are the evidences that you need to create when you look at doing the assignment. Now, so that is where I would want to shift you over to the presentation rather than show you so many documents on the screen. So for the purposes of today's discussion, we are looking at using the assignment brief, which is the assignment brief given here. And this particular assignment brief is primarily looking at discussing, how you would put together the evidence in terms of the assignment and achieve a particular grade, pass, merit, or distinction for the purposes of achievement and completion. Now, let me just share this bit. And then the other bit we will do is come across to you when I start showing you how to do the assignment and compile the evidence. Now, first things first, what we want to be able to do is when I look at the assignment discussion session, what I want to do essentially is talk about some of the basic bits in terms of how you start a Word document or how do you start an assignment. Now, the aim of this unit is to understand fundamentals of how do we deliver safe and effective healthcare services to users or patients within health and social care sector. This unit is a combination of understanding person-centered approach, 6 C's of care that are implemented, what are the major regulations which have to be conformed with in terms of a health and social care setting, and then when we look at the role of a health and social care professional, we talk about the role of a health and social care professional having certain attributes or basic, necessities in terms of skills, things like communication. And then we talk about how you do your work. Essentially, when you administer medicine, you look at managing, your roles and responsibilities, and also ensure that at any given stage you are not passing on infection, or you're basically following the guidelines and legislation to be able to ensure that the place of work is safe, you are safe, and the patients who are receiving, the healthcare or any sort of care are safe. So that is the main aim of studying this particular unit. Now, in order to look at doing the assignment, what I would suggest is at any given stage, there are a lot of tasks in the assignment which are going to ask you to have a specific organization in mind, because in some cases, when you're explaining theoretical concepts, you're talking about, they say things like communication models, you're talking about infection control, you're talking about person-centered approach, you're talking about principles of care planning. You would need to show some examples, or at least show application of that theory by quoting an example of an organization in terms of how things are managed or how things are done in that organization. And when we look at that, what we are looking at is essentially in those cases, you are looking at having a specific organization in mind, a company in mind where you've worked or you're working or you have researched, and that should allow you to bring that organization into your work when you have to explain and take examples. So this is a must for this assignment, that you'll have to take a specific organization, whether it's a care home, whether it's a nursery, whether it's a department within the National Health Service, or a hospital that you work in, or if you work in a particular department within A&E or any sort of thing that you have access to and you have information about, that is what you'll need to keep in mind. Before you start the assignment, I would make sure and request that you do an introduction of 20 to 30 words to explain why you've chosen this organization, or what department or what particular bits you're going to talk about and bring into your assignment for this particular organization when you use it for examples or quoting purposes. Obviously, in some cases, when you look at presenting an assignment at level 3, and this is something that you're learning at this stage, is to keep in mind that your presentation of work should be professional and it should follow certain basic guidelines, wherein it becomes a professional document and something which is presentable for the purposes of marking and checking. So make sure that you're producing a Word document which has basic things like you're using a font size 12, you're using line spacing 1.5, you're essentially making sure you're numbering the document in terms of pages, you are mentioning the headings very clearly of the task that you're attempting. One of the key requirements is that when you reference work or when you bring in other people's work into your own assignment, you need to reference it, and we follow Harvard referencing style system. Wherever you are reading something and paraphrasing or writing in your own words, then in those cases, you're going to be looking at, putting a bibliography or a list of bibliographic references towards the end of your document. And that is to ensure that your similarity or plagiarism in the assignment does not go over 20%. Now, you can write, there is no theoretical word limit in the assignment. Typically, you can submit an assignment of 10,000 words, not a problem. But in those cases, the bits that you would need to avoid is how much is too much to write, how much of your work is referenced, what is the status in terms of sanctity of the work that you're bringing in and writing as evidence. So that will need to be backed up by references. If you have references and if you're paraphrasing, then you need to be ensuring that your work is meeting that criteria of, what the task is asking and you're answering that task rather than beating around the bush. So at this stage, what I would suggest is you're looking at an assignment between 3,500 to 4,500 words maximum, because when you look at university, when you look at assignments that you get when you go into a university, you would normally have a word limit, and if you go over that word limit, you're going to be penalized. And essentially, the art of writing the assignment here is about academic writing, which is reference, which is factual, it is backed up by references, and it is something which is related to the task and builds on what you're trying to present or answer as a task, rather than discuss things in general. So you will have to start looking at conforming to certain sort of word limits, and that is what I've recommended here as a suggested word limit or a recommended word limit of 3 plus minus, I would say 3,500 words. Now there is grading in this course, so there is grading and grading in this unit or in this course as well. So when you look at doing the task, you have pass or merit or distinction. And if you're looking at higher grades like merit or distinction, then you're looking at attempting all the tasks, including the extension activities which are given in the assignment. Now, one of the things which I would suggest that when you do your assignment would be to also look at including pictures, diagrams, tables in it, because that helps you to reduce the amount of written work that you have to do. So for example, if I need to show 6 C's of care, then the idea would be to use an image, put that image into the document, put the source of that image, and then start explaining the 6 C's rather than just starting from scratch, because an image is worth 1,000 words. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as we know, sometimes we say. So it is good for you to be able to build certain context by using pictures, tables, diagrams, and that allows you to reduce the amount of written work that you're doing in terms of doing the assignment. So these are some important points that I would ask you to consider and keep in mind. Now, the other bit that you have to look at is, because you're doing the assignment, there's an assignment declaration document, which is a Word document you can download, and you can also fill this up electronically on our website. And this would allow you to say that this is my own work, I've produced it, I've not colluded with anybody, I've referenced my work, and this is something which has not been plagiarized or not somebody who has done it for me, but I've done the assignment myself, and you need to sign it. So you write your name, you put your student number, the course that you're doing, ATHE Level 3 Diploma in Health and Social Care, write the name of the unit, which is Unit 4, Working in Health and Social Care, tick all these boxes, sign at the bottom, and that should allow you to submit a declaration. Now, you can do this electronically on our website, and if I show you the website, that can be done by choosing your course, and this is something which is doable primarily on on the so there is one question which I'll also answer. Somebody has asked, and let me just quickly show you the website on which you can do the declarations. So this is the link. When you cut and paste it on the browser, you'll see that it'll take you to the website. And here, if you drop down and choose your course, and then what you could do is basically look at choosing the unit and then, essentially taking the unit and then ticking all these boxes, which is a similar declaration that you can have and use primarily on, the Word document which is given. Now, one of the questions which somebody has asked is, if you have not worked within this sector and you have to take an organization interview, then my suggestion would be you need to be able to research one organization. Most of you are based in Manchester. I would suggest use one of the organizations in Manchester by doing a quick search on Google in terms of care homes in Manchester. Most of this information is available on their websites. So if I go into, say, for example, care homes in Manchester, and one of the ones that I pick up is a care home primarily, say, for example, Care UK, which is one of them, Automa, which is another. You can go on to Trusted Care, which is another one, or Ivory Health. You can look at, if I show you this very briefly again on the browser, my suggestion would be to look at doing a bit of research. and just showing you my full screen. So if I do a care home search, there are lots of them which come up. As you can see, I click on one of them and I can use this care home, because obviously what it will do is provide me background and knowledge and information about what the care home is. And this can be used as an organization, for you to bring into your assignment. So essentially you're choosing a care home. Name of that care home could be, Acacia Care Lodge. And if you want to look at about the care home and, what they offer, what kind of care they offer, there is some bit of knowledge that you can gain from the website by researching about the care home or reading about it. And this then appropriate sections of it, as you know, you would be able to then use and bring it into your piece of work for the purposes of referring to an organization. So there are lots of them. It seems to be a very big, organization which has multiple care homes in multiple locations. But essentially, I would go into, Acacia Care Homes as a background, and then look at some of the services. Now, you don't need to look at discussing everything about the care home. This will be with respect to a particular task or a particular, task which you're doing in the assignment, and that is where you will need to refer to. For example, they offer lots of different types of care: residential care, nursing care, dementia care. So I might just take residential care or nursing care in mind. And with that in mind, I might look at answering or quoting them as an example by studying maybe, say, for example, a case study which has been given, or bring some part of what I've learned from their website into the assignment. So sometimes you could look at doing a bit of research on the organization, and they would be, places. If you have not worked in any particular place, that's fine. But the idea is to take a reference in terms of an organization for the purposes of obviously looking at, doing the assignment. So I hope in some cases that should be okay. And, it is not something that you need to have a practical working experience in, but quoting this from a practicality point of view would be easier for the purposes of quoting examples and, doing the tasks. Now, very briefly, before I start, what I would want to do is exactly show you how I would have, how I would go about and obviously look at compiling an assignment. So a couple of things. As you can see, it's a blank work document. What I'm going to do is put the first thing here in terms of the name of the unit. I'm going to click on the footer. I'm going to put my name in as a student that I'm doing this particular assignment. And then what I would do is I would copy a couple of bits and pieces from the assignment and then put them in as tasks. So for example, the assignment that I'm going to do, if I take, say, in this case, task one, which is task one, and then there are a couple of bullet points in task one that I need to do. So what I'm going to do is write them as it is. If I'm looking at doing the extension activities, I will write them as well. I'm just cutting and pasting them from the Word document, which is the assignment brief. And as I would do is basically put some spacing in the middle between them, so that, these are essentially the evidence is what I'm going to compile underneath. Now, I would also insert a page number into this, because obviously my assignment is going to run into a couple of pages. And then once I've done task one, I will look at probably putting task two down. And then again, copy and paste some of the bullet points of task two, which are going to conform to some of the assessment criteria. I'm going to create some space, because obviously I'm going to compile and look at the evidence that I'm going to be putting in here. So similarly, once I've done that, now what I could do is when I do the, creation of my assignment, I'm going to basically structure it in a way wherein before task one, I'm going to write a bit of introduction. So here I would say every care homes, and I'm going to write a bit of an introduction about every care homes, because this is an organization that I'm going to take while I do my assignment. Now, towards the end, assuming this is how you follow it through, towards the end, I will also write conclusion, maybe of 20 to 30 words. And then I will also compile references which are required for the assignment. Now, what I would do is essentially quickly go in and do a bit of formatting so that my assignment is presentable and obviously, meets the criteria in terms of the tasks which are required to be done. So I'm just going to create what is called a table of contents using the reference or the the option in Microsoft Word, and this is where I'm going to quickly format them. So this is a exact way I would suggest that some of you, when you do your assignments, this is how I would suggest that you look at doing the assignments and start compiling your evidence. So this is what I've done, and now what I would do is draw up a table of contents here. So I go into references, and then I draw up a table of content. So this tells me, and then I'll insert a page here because I want to start from a next page. So this tells me that these are the tasks that I've done in the assignment for the unit. It has my name, it has the page numbers, and obviously some of the bits that I'm going to start adding evidence. What I'll do is I'll create those spaces. And as the assignment expands, this is a working document that you are creating, which is where what you will submit finally as an assignment. But this would allow you to look at how an assignment is supposed to be done. Now, I would save this document as the assignment for the unit, so that you are absolutely also saving the work that you're doing. And this would mean that when I look at unit 4 and say HSC, and this is the assignment. So you put a name down and you save it, and essentially this is the document that you're going to be finally submitting. Now, what we need to do in this is obviously look at putting the evidence in and answering the tasks or the questions which have been given. And that is where I would go about start with the first option of, it says a definition of person-centered approach. So when I talk about a definition of person-centered approach, if some of you recall, this is related to task 1.1. So I'll kind of start putting so that I can also see that these are tasks related to the assignment brief, and they are the assessment. They're also meeting the assessment criteria, which are given in the assignment brief. So just labeling them and labeling them appropriately so that I know that this task is the merit task. If you're not looking at doing merit or distinction, obviously you will not be doing these tasks. And then once you've labeled them here, I can right click on it, update the fields, and update the table of contents. As you can see, it shows me what task you're attempting in the assignment. Now, if I have to look at a bit of a definition or background about ATHE care homes, then this is something that I will take from the website, which is where we actually visited. So what we need to do is go back to the website and find a bit of a small write-up which tells me about ATHE homes. So in ATHE homes, ATHE care homes are an organization based in Manchester, but have several care homes and lodges across England and Wales. I have chosen this particular organization for the purposes of doing my assignment, as this would, as their website has provided information which I can use and quote as examples for doing my tasks, for doing the assignment tasks. Right. So in this case, this is the reason why you've chosen this. I'll also mention in particular, I would be referencing the information for quoting examples from the say residential care and facilities which are provided by ATHE homes, and they are going to relate to the assignment task. Now, this bit is primarily good enough as far as the introduction for the Avery Holmes is concerned. And if there is any bits and pieces that I would normally use, what I'm going to do is obviously reference it towards the end. Now, just to give you an example, if I talk about a definition of person-centered approach, so here, I would basically write the definition of person-centered approach. And a person-centered approach, if you recall, is about putting the needs and individuals of the needs and requirements of the individual first, and this takes into account their preferences and the care worker, or in this case the healthcare professional, will look into ensuring that they are able to take into account the basics of how care can be provided using this particular approach. And this particular approach essentially is important because this approach looks into ensuring that people's values, beliefs, their culture, their preferences, their emotional and physical needs, and also, respect and individuality are taken into account. And that is the bit that I need to explain here. So I would say a person-centered approach, looks at putting the person or the patient at the center of everything. And when I talk about person-centered approach, I can also put, an example of an image. And that example of an image, when I talk about person-centered approach, or person-centered care, basically talks about the 6 basic principles which are included, and that would be, looking at, covering this particular task. So I need to put the source of the image, and source of the image, because of the fact that I've looked at, talking about person-centered approach, and in this case, put that image into, my assignment. So what I need to be able to do in this case is also mention the source, and this is from the NHS website. And then what I need to do is obviously put a link for the person-centered approach, and that would, give me the bit in terms of how I would go about, essentially, referring it. So in this case, what I would do is I would take it from the Health Foundation, because there's an article on that, and that particular article is what I've taken as a source. And what I would do is basically put the, this is person-centered approach, and the source in this case is Health Foundation, and the link to the site is what I also need to put, and that is what I put in here in order to ensure that what I'm writing is something which is, also being referenced, and it is not, copied and pasted, essentially from anywhere, but it is coming from a particular website. Now, if I have to reference this towards the end, what I would do in this case would be to go into the end of the document where I put references, and I would put the topic, which is person-centered care made simple. That is the name of the document that I've taken it from, the Health Foundation. And then I will put the link here, which is this. And then I would also put accessed on, which is 1st February 2023. This is something that is now following Harvard referencing style, way of putting the references in. Now, for those of you who are new to Harvard referencing, you can also do referencing within the Word, as long as you know the website and you know where you're taking the material from. So what I would do is click on references. In the references option, there are lots of different types of referencing system, but we choose Harvard Anglia. And then if I have to insert a reference here, in this case, for this particular picture or the source that I've done, what I would do is, how would I go about putting the reference? So I'll show you in a second in terms of just putting the picture in the middle. And then what I want to do is put a reference here. So how would I go about putting a reference? Click on reference, go to insert citation. Now this is something which I'm taking from a website. So here the name of the author, which is which is given on the website is what I would need to, essentially take. So the author on the website is going to be the Health Foundation. Now, what is the name of the web page? The name of the web page is Person-Centered Care Made Simple. What is the URL of the website? Copy it from the browser. What is the year in which it was published? 2014. So I know it is October 2014 because it is given on the website along with the article. I'm accessing it in the year 2023. The month is 02 and today's date 01. Now, when I click OK on this, it will put this reference, as you can see, on the picture. Now, what I would do is basically go and edit this citation. And what I want to do is when I edit the citation in the detail, what I want to do is put the basic bit, which is the name of the author in this case, and the publication that would allow us to essentially, put a name of an author, which is basically created this document. So what I'm going to do is just quickly look at the document and look at who's the author of this particular document. So the author of this particular document is, one second, let me just double check. It is normally given towards the end in the bibliography. So the author of the document is, is the Healthcare Foundation. And I would show this to you here. So essentially here, if I show you how the document is to be, how do I get hold of the document and, the referencing part of it. If you see this particular document, which I have looked at opening, and this is up on Moodle as well. The name of the document is Person-Centered Approach. It is coming from this particular website. The date is given here. I can copy the quick link and obviously download it and see the document in detail. And this document, as you can see, has been written or created by the Healthcare Foundation. So this bit, if I click OK now, that puts the reference into the document. And when I have to generate the reference, automatically towards the end, if I follow this approach, then I don't need to write, this bit in terms of the source. What I will do is just put the heading here before the thing, and I would delete this. And then towards the end, what I would do is when I have to generate references, I would click on this bit, which is bibliography, and then click on this tab. And as you can see, it will bring the full reference on automatically. And if I follow this for the purposes of, looking at for every such reference or every such material that I bring it in, what it will do is automatically generate the references for me towards the end of the document in a chronological fashion, in an alphabetical order. And this is how you would look at following Harvard referencing. So this bit in terms of what is person-centered approach and why is it important, you can add, because it talks about a definition. So here what I would do is basically add a couple of things, in terms of the definition, so that, it is something which is complete. And, it is important to understand that the definition covers, a couple of things related to person-centered approach. So I'll expand this slightly by adding a few bits with regards to, the definition of person-centered care. And as you can see, this would be broken down into one or two paragraphs. And then what I would say is that the Healthcare Foundation includes a framework, and it talks about, people being able. So these are the 6, principles that, or the underlying 4 or 6 principles that we talk about, person-centered care, which would be included. And this would essentially help complete this particular task, that we are looking at, for task 1.1 as an activity. And this would be, good enough to cover this task. Now, similarly, we would go across and look at an analysis of person-centered approach and how it allows the care to be provided to the patient. So you go into slides 1.2. Now, where is this data going to come from? Some part of it is going to come from on the handouts that are provided. And some part of this would come from the presentations that you have gone through with me in terms of the material with regards to, the unit, the study of the unit. So if I just bring this across in a context and put this into context, for you, that where there's this information coming from, some part of it you are going to use the presentation, but you'll have to elaborate, because some of the presentations that I have will have handouts, and you would read those and then obviously look at elaborating in order to cover the topics which are required, and do justification in terms of word limit for the topics which are required to be covered in the assignment. So if I just briefly share the full screen now, I've opened the Learning Outcome 1 presentation, as you can see. And in the Learning Outcome 1 presentation, we talked about the person-centered approach. And as you would see here, talks about what is, the person-centered approach, why is it important? And we talked about these 6 values: respect, dignity, individuality, choice, rights and independence, and partnership. So those are the values. Now in 1.2, we talked about how do we analyze person-centered care and why is it important, and has become fundamental to delivering care in the National Health Service or in the UK. So there are some points that I put up here, and they can be used here, to essentially cover this task. Similarly, go to 1.3, 1.4, and you will go on and complete the bits on your assignment. Now, once you start going through some bits of the assignment, it will be useful for you to have the presentation open, and also the unit specification open, because in some cases you can clearly find out what is required to be covered in this particular task. So here, when we talk about analysis of person-centered approach, the reason why this has become now central to providing all services in the National Health Service and any sort of a health and social care setting is because when this approach was adopted into the NHS after the Lord Darzy's review and report in 2007, you would see that this particular approach, and following this approach, provides consistency. It allows care to be tailored and delivered as per the patient's needs and requirements. And then it also looks at taking into account practices which then can be improved once any shortcomings or shortfalls are discovered while delivering care to patients. So here is where an analysis would require you to bring an example towards the end. After you put the theory in, you would require to put an example in, and that example will come from your every care home when you talk about residential care. So that is how you would go about, completing each of the tasks in the assignment. Now, these are some examples of how I'm showing you would go about completing the assignment. And I would suggest that when you start doing the assignment, you would probably look at doing the task 1, maybe spend a couple of hours, 1 or 2 hours, complete task 1, then go on and add task 2 in the assignment, then task 3, task 4, and similarly, and so on and so forth. At some stage, you would complete all the 6 tasks, and this will become one big document of, maybe 10, 15, 12, 15, 20 pages. And that would be the document that you submit in for the purposes of marking and assessment to us after you have completed the draft. So this is where I would suggest, if you feel that in some questions or in some tasks you are not able to understand what this task conforms to, or what material is required to be essentially put in as evidence, then in those cases I would suggest that you refer to the presentations of learning outcomes, different learning outcomes. And in the presentations, as you can see, what I've done is that the assessment criteria are clearly labeled. So it provides you a very clear guidance in terms of how and what evidence needs to be presented for the purposes of achieving the tasks in the assignment. So I hope this session has been useful for you to understand how to go about doing the assignment for this particular unit. And what I would do is, when I look at completing this assignment towards the end, what I would do is basically look at following certain tips which are required for the purposes of ensuring that you are meeting the criteria. So sometimes you'll have words which will talk about explain, define, describe. In order to give you some suggested word limits, you're looking at about 100 words to 125 words to cover that task. Where you have assess, examine, clarify, or analyze, you're probably looking at about 175 to 225 words. Then you talk about compare, contrast, critically or critically evaluate, then you're looking at about 200 odd words to be 200 to 225 odd words to be able to, write that task. Now, typically, critically aware, critically evaluate, or compare and contrast tasks will be in distinction or merit activities. Most of the merit activities will have assess or analyze, and they would generally be required to have an example. In critically aware or critically compare tasks, you have to basically start with writing about the topic, explain and build some data or evidence by putting in some arguments like positives and negatives, advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons. And then towards the end, you have to form or come to a conclusion that why you think 6 C's of, care are important for providing care in a care home, or why, using PPE, for example, is important to prevent the transmission of infections while administering medicine. So in those cases, you would also need to give an example and then conclude towards the end, and they are normally required in the distinction tasks. So here we expect a learner to put the evidence in by explaining the term, definition, talking about advantages, disadvantages, and then, at some stage, basically go into by, talking about going into, the examples, and that would essentially help cover distinction criteria. Now, towards the end, what I would suggest is, there's a timeline that you should kind of look towards working in terms of submission of this assignment. I would say today is the 1st of February, probably not more than 4 weeks, is what you would need to spend on submitting the assignment for this. So in this case, today being the final session on Unit 4, because we've covered the 6 learning outcomes and the assignment criteria, I would suggest that, what you need to do is take, 2 to 3 weeks to be able to, complete the work and then submit it to me for purposes of marking on learnerwork@ukversity.co.uk. Now, the other bit that you have to keep in mind is if you're going to bring work from the UK Versity slides into your assignment, then you can do referencing in this way. When you choose the name of the topic of the slide that you have looked at, which learning outcome was it, which slides you have referred to, and obviously they are published by UK Versity, and then, date of assessing those slides would need to be mentioned, and that would also conform to, the Harvard referencing. In this case, you're also looking at, ensuring that when you look at doing referencing, when you fill those details in, you're going to be able to, mention and generate referencing, with regards to, referencing that you have to do while you are putting in-text referencing next to paragraphs or text or sentences. But towards the end in your bibliography, this is how the reference would essentially, look like. So I hope, this is something which has been useful, and, you would be able to now look at, obviously, looking at doing the assignment for this particular unit. If you have any queries, refer to the, the presentation slides and the handouts that I've given, and some of the additional reading material and websites which are given would allow you to, read them. And then bring those evidence in the form of paraphrasing into your own work, and that would help you accomplish and obviously present those tasks for the purposes of completing this unit. So thank you so much for attending. Now, what I would want to do is obviously check with you if there are any questions. This particular sample, that I have prepared as a document, what I'm going to do is this particular document that I have here, which I show you again, is what I'm going to do is put in as a sample assignment or document, for you to look at and reference when it comes to, obviously taking something that you could follow through in terms of how you would go about, compiling the evidence in the form of an assignment document for this particular unit. So I'll put this up on Moodle as well, together with the presentation on assignment discussion. And then obviously the copy of recording of this session is going to be available from the YouTube channel. So any questions at this stage? Any questions that you're in, anybody? So I've got one question, which obviously just quickly answering that question. Now, most of you have completed, I would say, more or less all the units in this particular course. So for those of you who haven't started to do the assignment, my suggestion would be this is a bit of a wake-up call. And the idea would be to try and start now getting down to doing the assignments for all the units. So we've covered the first unit, structure and overview of health and social care sector, principle, values and regulation in healthcare, human growth development. We've done the unit 4, which is working in health and social care. There is personal and professional development that we have covered. Now, one of the units that will be the final unit that we are looking at, covering. So final unit is basically research in health and social care. This is the last unit that we're going to be starting off next week. And that unit that we're going to be starting off next week will primarily go across into 4 sessions, because there are 3 learning outcomes, and the 4th session is primarily going to be discussion on how to put together a research project on that particular unit. So for those of you who have let me quickly show you Moodle as well. For those of you who have, joined this course, what you're going to be able to see then is obviously, as you can see, all the units we have covered so far. Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4 is the one that we are completing today. So I'm going to try and upload as we talk, the assignment session and the sampler document. Now, next week, we are going to be starting the final unit, which is primarily going to be, the unit on research in health and social care. So if I just put this on for you now, you'll be able to access this pretty much straight away. So here is where the assignment discussion session is, and then the sampler assignment, which I have put in, which I've created today for you to be able to look at, is also something that I will upload here now. So this one that you want to look at, for example, if this is something that you want to follow through, and you can download this document, make some changes to it, but pretty much, as you can see, most of it would remain the same. So what I will do is, put this up here as well for you, so that if those of you who want to start with this particular document can use it, and then, start from here. And this is the next topic that we would start from next week, for which you'll get the schedule. So classes again on Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll be looking at covering the research in health and social care unit, which, as I mentioned to you, have 3 learning outcomes. And this is a unit in which we will be looking at creating a mini research project for the purposes of, obviously, completing the course. So most of you who are on this course should be able to complete this within February. We should have completed all teaching and learning within February. And that would mean that you should be looking at certification in the first week of March or mid of March, on this particular qualification. So if there are any further questions, I will be more than happy to take. If not, then I'm going to try and end the session, and then I will catch up with you next week on Tuesday, where we'll start the next unit, which is, the final unit for this course, the research in health and social care. Any questions, anybody? Mohammed, any questions? Avlina, any questions? Awais, any questions?
No,
Neeru,
thank you.
Shaheen, Hussein, thank you. Nargis, Sana, Farida, any questions at your end? Nazia, Tahira?
Thank you.
Tahira. Okay, great. As Ghazala. Okay, that's brilliant. So no more questions. If you think of any, you can email those questions to me at litc@ukversity.co.uk. And what I would be able to do is send you additional information, or maybe a template or a sampler that you want to look at, so that you're able to get on and obviously go ahead and complete this particular unit. So thanks so much for attending, and I will see you next week with regards to starting the final unit.